What the Tech is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ. Welcome everybody to What the Tech. It's a little late this show. I had to travel 3 miles, and that in New York time is about an hour and a half. I'm joined by Paul Thurrott, as I am each and every week. How you doing, Paul?
I don't think I've moved 3 feet out of my office today, but
it was awful.
There you go.
Awful.
Yeah.
Traffic was awful.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's miserable. I don't even know. The whole show is just going to be me ranting about traffic at this point. But it's going to be a little short of a show because we have a late start, and coincidentally, Paul needs to be out of here at 5 o'clock. So this week is going to be late, and we are going to get straight into it. The entire show is dedicated to the start orb disappearing.
Yes, please.
Because we could go on for hours about that. People are very upset about this, Paul.
I know.
What do you have to say about it?
I'm going to try to be civil here. What I would say in general is just that there are big issues to discuss around Windows 8 and this video presentation you're trying to put on here. And
well, you went into widescreen. You just went into widescreen.
I won't even. Oh, did I go widescreen?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Sorry about that. So, email and Twitter. I get a lot of feedback from people, obviously, and literally hundreds of emails every day. And, it's kind of alarming to me that people who are, power users, who consider themselves to be power users, are the most resistant to change,
Sure.
I had written something a few weeks back that I think I would just remind people of when I was speaking of, the WOA tablets, but also Intel-based tablets that will run Windows 8 versus traditional PCs. And that those kinds of hardware kind of line up with the two different user interfaces that are in Windows 8. And that there's no reason you can't use both, but most people who use Windows 8 on a tablet are going to exist primarily in the Metro environment. And most people who use Windows 8 on the desktop or on a traditional laptop without touch capabilities probably is going to spend most of the time on the desktop, And there are a few small changes between the desktop and Windows 8 and Windows 7, but honestly, they're not major. And as someone who has been living in the Windows 8 desktop for several months now, I can tell you that surmounting those issues is not difficult. And so, the sheer level of whining that I've seen has been alarming to me. And I just, I wrote something today where I kind of addressed that. And it's the silly stuff like, shutdown is a little different than it used to be. You're like shutting down, really.
Well, you know what it is? I think it's a drastic change. If you really look at the last 15 years of Windows, it's pretty much been the same exact thing. And now you're taking what people are used to. Even the power user that's a tech-savvy user now has to relearn certain things that they're
To me, though, that's something to get excited about, not something to get afraid of. I like that it's different. It's boring to me when everything in Windows is the same. And a lot of the changes they're making aren't arbitrary. Like there have always been changes to the structure of the start menu over the years, which seemed arbitrary. Like they were just trying to keep us on our toes. Now we have this completely new runtime engine with the Metro environment, and these things encompass everything in Windows 8 and are the OS that's running under Windows 8, if you will. And that's the reason why you see things like, the back and the switcher and the start tip and the charms and the notifications, the full screen notifications, as well as the little toast style notifications all appear consistently over the desktop as they do over Metro, over the start screen or over Metro apps. So, you can't just get rid of the start screen. You can't say, well, just give me the ability to go back to the start menu, because once you ask for that, what you're really asking for is Windows 7. And if you want to run Windows 7, just run Windows 7. It's fine.
People
doesn't stop working,
One email one of the things that many people have emailed me is the complaint that they feel that Windows 8 is slower than Windows 7 because of all the Metro apps. And
That's
I think people
absolutely not true.
People are not putting into a couple things into consideration. One is that many people are running this on older hardware. Everybody, you know what? Not
They're
everybody's
also
installing this on
they're
their.
also just wrong. I think in
Yeah.
that case. So, for example, I had someone write me today and say, "Hey, maybe I'm wrong about this, but it seems like Task Manager is evenly splitting up the available RAM between Metro and desktop, and that Metro gets 50% of the RAM and Explorer gets the other 50%." It's like, guys, seriously. Windows is sophisticated about memory management. One of the beautiful things about Metro style apps is that they will suspend and then literally be quit
Yeah.
by the operating system as memory is needed. Memory, disk defragmentation, shutting down every night. There's probably a litany of things which we could list that are things you no longer need to micromanage as a user. Let the computer do it. It's good about stuff like that.
Yeah, another question I got was, what do you do if you turn off? What's going to happen if you turn off search? And I said, well, why would you want to turn off search? I think, and listen, I'm not one that doesn't do these things. I am used to shutting down a lot of stuff in Windows. I mean, a lot of us do MS config and we do the services and we shut down certain services. There are many people that still do that, and but most do not.
Many, there are many in number, but small in percentage. It's like one of the little things I got into with today was about Media Center, for example, that digital media feature from previous versions of Windows that went nowhere fast, and very few people use it. It turns out, in sheer numbers, there are probably millions of people who use it. Someone threw out the figure 6 million, for example. 6 million sounds like a big number until you compare it to the total number of people using Windows, which is like 1.3 billion. It's not a big percentage, There are probably more people running Windows 7 on a Mac than there are running the Windows 7 version of Windows Media Center, or I would say every version of Media Center combined. So, if you're worried about like supporting Windows users, as I am, right? Arguably, those people with a Mac make up a bigger audience than those people that care about Media Center.
Yeah,
it's kind of a hard, cold thing to say to people. They don't like to hear that because obviously a lot of these people are fans of that product or use it every day or whatever and really enjoy it. But the truth is, the world is moving on.
Sure.
There are fans of paper books, but that world is moving on. There are fans of optical media like DVD discs that have movies on them. That world is moving on. And so is the world of terrestrial cable and, over-the-air HD channels that you get locally through some kind of weird antenna. Most people just don't do stuff like that. It doesn't mean it's not good. It doesn't mean that the version Microsoft made didn't have value. It just means that's not really where things are going.
Yeah, I mean, it's an evolution of the operating system, and finally, people have said, oh, well, Windows needs to do something different. They need to do something drastic, and this is their way of saying, listen, this is where we're going. This is what's happening with Windows.
Yeah, right. And by the way, if there's a primary point I wanted to communicate, which I think is unfortunately has been lost on people today in this debate, it's that I'm not actually taking a stand here, right? This isn't like I'm right and you're wrong and my opinion about this thing is correct and yours is wrong. What I'm saying is Microsoft has made a product called Windows 8. It's not going to change demonstrably before the final release.
Yeah.
You can disagree or agree with that. It doesn't matter, but that's a fact. So complaining about, shutdown's a little weird now, or I want my start menu back. What I'm saying is those things are not changing. I have not actually expressed an opinion about whether any of those things are good, bad, or indifferent. I've just said this is what they're doing. You need to deal with that.
I imagine that many people are going to... Windows 7 will be, to many people, what Windows XP was. I think many people are going to hang on to Windows 7 as long as they can because they don't welcome the change.
Yep, and those people are welcome to do that. And businesses will too, by the way.
But see, here's the difference between Vista and this. People didn't welcome Vista because Vista had hardware compatibility issues from the beginning.
Right.
This will most probably not have those hardware compatibility issues. So they're doing it for a preference.
Vista's hard for me because people misunderstand the point of Vista, and for a good reason. Microsoft wanted to position Windows for the next decade, and to do that, they had to thoroughly overhaul the underpinnings or the foundation of the product, and they did that in Windows Vista. Now, to the end user who maybe had a 2-year-old XP machine at the time and bought Windows Vista and upgraded and had a miserable experience because on that day it ran a lot more slowly and maybe the aero graphics didn't work on their old graphics card or whatever. that argument doesn't really help, right? I've not solved any problems by telling you that, and I'm not going to solve any problems by telling you that Windows Vista got a lot better over the years or whatever. It doesn't really matter. The point is that they did the deep architectural work they needed to do in that release. The end product didn't enchant a lot of people, and the sad fact is because of the way they developed the product and then literally halted right in the middle and started over from scratch. There's a lot of weird little dead ends in Windows Vista that we kind of forget about, like Windows Calendar and Mobility Center and all these weird little things that they kind of put in there and then never, they were half realized versions of things that were intended for Longhorn. So the big difference between Windows Vista and Windows 8 is that even if Windows 8 fails to the extent that Windows Vista failed in people's eyes, from a perception standpoint, aside from the fact that we'll still sell hundreds of millions of copies a year and will be very successful monetarily for Microsoft, it's exciting to me, that they're going after a big bet, that they're changing.
Yeah, it's a big change. Totally.
Very big change.
Because even though they have the desktop, Paul, this is you have a glimpse into the vision of what the future of Windows will be. I mean, this is the direction they're going, and
it's absolutely a 1.0 thing. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
This Metro stuff is going to change dramatically. There's no doubt about it. But here's the difference. With Vista, I gave you this nebulous excuse or reason why they did what they did, and it didn't really ultimately benefit the typical user much, right? In other words, Microsoft completely overhauled the underpinnings of Windows. Congratulations. That doesn't really help anybody. With this version of Windows, the big difference is they're going after something very specific. Microsoft has come to the conclusion that these touch-based systems are a big deal and threaten this product, that simpler computing devices make sense to people, that's what they want. And that even though you don't see it, like last year, you can't claim that tablets really dramatically impacted anything other than perhaps netbooks. This year, I guess we'll see. Next year, maybe it's very dramatic. They're looking down the road and saying, look, if we don't address this now, we're screwed. And if they put out another version of Windows 7 with desktop improvements and more multitasking with Windows everywhere and all that kind of stuff, that thing would have pleased a very small segment of these people now who are freaking out over Metro. But it really would have been the final nail in the coffin for Windows, because I do believe, and I know Microsoft does, that people want, and it sounds so stupid because it's so simple. They want simpler computing devices, and it sounds nice as a theory, but sometimes it takes something like the iPad to drive home the fact that it's not just a theory. They really do want simpler.
Well, when you have people just using iPads exclusively as their computer, as their everyday computer, and they're typing on glass and they love it. I mean, maybe we are the minority that doesn't like those things, and we are. We definitely are, and our viewers are the minority of computer users that really look for certain details. A lot of people don't care what it is; they want simple, and Windows 8 is simple. Now, this is my issue, and I'm hearing echoes in my head. Sorry, this is my issue with what has been presented to us, and we spoke about this off the air, and I'm sure you think I'm crazy.
Okay.
I think the trackpad on laptops will change the user experience for many, many people. And this is why I say this. Many people, they don't go buy $1,000, $2,000 laptops. They're buying $500, $400, the entry-level laptop, which whatever the price is.
Are. Yep.
The trackpads on these devices are awful. They have multi-touch gesturing, but they're not that great. The hardware's not good. The drivers aren't good. I think that will be a make or break for many people. If I'm using this on two computers. One has a really good trackpad and one has a not so good trackpad. The experience that I have with Windows 8 on the better trackpad is 10 times better than the standard trackpad that I have on a lower end laptop.
But how is that different from the experience of both those products in Windows 7?
I think in Windows 8 it relies heavily on the trackpad experience.
Okay.
In the Metro UI.
Yep.
There are times that because you're constantly scrolling side to side, up and down. I was comparing it to 7, and I don't really notice it as much in 7 than I do in Windows 8, because it's really relying on the scroll, the multi-gesturing scrolling. It's relying on the going to side in the Metro UI. I'm just curious if this is going to kind of force manufacturers to put better trackpads on these things, or put 5-point gesturing or 10-point gesturing, whatever they have.
I think the thing you're missing, not you, I mean, I think the thing that's missing, I think would be the better way to say that, is that in this beta, in the consumer preview, you're essentially getting pretty basic drivers for everything, right? And that, no doubt, that PC makers will include that kind of stuff. If you buy a Lenovo, for example, that has a trackpad, oftentimes they'll support multi-touch gesturing on the trackpad. It's not a direct Windows 7 feature, but it's something they can add very easily. So I think it would be neat for people, if they had a trackpad-based computer, to be able to pinch on the trackpad and do that semantic zoom feature that you can now only do with multi-touch. In that fashion, I mean, using pinch. It would be cool to enable some of those things. The only thing I have to say, though, is that, and this has been proven over subsequent releases of macOS 10 as well, where multi-touch makes some sense on a trackpad, but not in more in some ways than in others. For example, I think one of the big successes of macOS 10 Lion was they figured out a way to do system-wide navigation using a trackpad that makes a lot of sense, right? I think it's like 3 fingers or 4 fingers.
3-finger, 2-finger,
that stuff makes a lot of sense. Using a trackpad to indirectly manipulate an object on screen, for example, if you wanted to zoom in and out of a picture, or grab an object in a 3D program and twist it in space. That is a little harder because in your mind, it's easy to sort of grab something like you would on a Surface television or on a, like a direct touch screen device, whatever it is. Whereas on a trackpad where your hand's over here and this thing's happening over here, it's a little bit of a spatial thing where I think it's a little harder. So I think there's some learnings there about what works and what doesn't work. And perhaps we'll see that either directly in the product that will just work generically across all trackpads, maybe in the release candidate version, or you'll just see that from Synaptics and all the people that make those trackpads. Yeah, those things will ship with the devices.
I think some of, but a lot of these, I think the lower end Acers and Asus machines, they're not good. What they have on them now,
right? So
I'm just wondering. Maybe it's just me because I'm going from the MacBook Pro, and it has a great trackpad on there. So,
it has a big trackpad on there.
Yeah,
right?
So I don't know if it's just my experience, and I use the Windows 8 machine all weekend to see if it's just me not adjusting well because I've been on this machine for so long.
Yep.
But you know what? I have to tell you, the experience on these lower end machines were not so good, and I was thinking, well, the experience that people are going to have with a $1,000 laptop, which you always do, but is going to be totally different from what you're getting with a $500 laptop if the trackpad is not that great. And it's a tiny little thing, and most people wouldn't notice it. But to me, it seemed like it was a big deal. Going from computer to computer, the experience was totally different.
So, I mean, just as a general statement, I think it's fair to say that the experience you're going to get in Windows 8, as with any other version of Windows, is always going to be better on new hardware. I mean, it's just the way it is,
Yeah, and again,
it's going to
still
be tough
a beta
in the very beginning, aside from tablets, that, a lot of PC makers are going to repurpose whatever machine they happen to have in the market at the time, and they'll just put Windows 8 on it. So if you have like a regular mouse or a trackpad, it might not necessarily be a great experience.
Yeah.
I think that I don't have a lot of personal experience along this lines, but one of the things I heard from 3 different people at Microsoft was this notion that once you get used to all these different ways of doing things, you find yourself seamlessly moving between them on the same hardware if it supports all 3. So, I have this tablet here that supports multi-touch. You can plug in a keyboard and a mouse, and you'll, use the keyboard for some navigational tasks. You'll use the mouse. You'll use touch occasionally, and you don't really think about it. It's just something that you do naturally. But when you step back and really kind of examine the way you're using the computer, it's changed a little bit because now you have all these options. Yeah. And I don't use it enough yet. I've been trying to figure out a way to maybe use this as my main machine in a way that makes sense.
Paul. I mean, I'm using this little numeric pad to switch to video. It's a Bluetooth numeric pad, and my mind is constantly going to the keyboard.
Does the little numeric pad have a start button on it? Because people would love that.
No, it doesn't. But
that's too bad.
I love this little thing. It's a Microsoft numeric pad. It was like $10, and it's Bluetooth because my computer has Bluetooth built in.
Right.
Yeah, so I like it a lot, and I'm using it. I don't know. I'm just going to talk about this for the rest of the show. I don't care. It is a very light show today because Paul needs to get out of here at 5, and I started the show late. I was stuck in traffic to drive 3 miles. But we have a number of things, and the next thing I want to talk about is the iPad release, and we'll get back to Windows also. But before we do, I want to talk about our sponsor, Hover.com. Domain names made simple. I'm a big fan of Hover. I've been using Hover. They've been an advertiser of What the Tech for some time now. And you should try them out, too. They make domain names a very easy thing to purchase. Unlike those other guys, you don't have to go to the website and worry about what you're clicking on. Because with Hover, it's a very clean layout. It's a very easy layout, and they make it simple. If you go to gfq.hover.com, you get 10% off your entire purchase, which is great because it's a nice little deal. Or you could use promo code GFQ. Or, you know what? Use promo code WTT because they want us to use WTT as a promo code. So if you're buying a domain name, use promo code WTT upon checkout. You get 10% off your entire purchase. And this is what, Paul uses to buy whatever he's buying. See? Are you frozen, Paul? Oh, no, there you are.
Oh, there I am.
You froze for a little bit.
I occasionally go into a hibernation.
Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe he just doesn't want to talk about Hover. It's okay. And now you're square again. Okay. Hover.com, domain name made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com, get 10% off your entire purchase. Okay. I don't know what happened, Paul. Your video went back to square.
Huh.
Hey, look at that.
That's weird.
Look at that. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Well, actually, I could probably shut this thing down. Let's see.
There you go. Now you're back. I do want to talk about the iPad event tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which will be very interesting. And actually, you know what? I had a meeting. Now I got to cancel it because I forgot there's an iPad event tomorrow. So there you go. That was good.
I'm canceling everything for the iPad event myself.
So do you want to speculate on what you think?
I do.
We should
actually,
do a
I'll
little
throw something out because I've been wrong about everything with the iPad. So what the hell? So I'm going to change my tune, and it goes like this. I think that Apple has a rich history of evolving successful products and not really doing anything revolutionary, and I would expect them to do exactly that for the iPad. So obviously, we're going to get this iPad HD that has a Retina display, which is fantastic. It's going to look almost exactly like the current version, and that doesn't sound like much of an upgrade, but I think they're going to sell like gajillions of them regardless, and I really wish my camera would just move down a little bit there. I just think it's going to be phenomenally successful. The other thing I just throw out from sort of a competitive standpoint is that aside from the big picture stuff around the iPad versus Windows 8, where Microsoft is taking this big heavy OS and they're pushing it down to a tablet, and Apple is taking this very thin, light, and wonderful OS and they're kind of pushing it up to a tablet. There is an interesting thing that could occur where I don't know what the exact resolution of this iPad HD or iPad 3 is going to be called, but it's going to be really like super high res, like high DPI essentially.
Yeah.
The standard Windows 8 tablet is going to be 1366 by 768. It's interesting that Apple could possibly leapfrog Windows 8 like 6 or 9 months before it even comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're going to see different resolution devices, but I think that's a key thing in a device that you're going to use to do such things as, watch HD movies, not just movies, or
but it's
read
still
books
not
where the
widescreen.
text is like really beautiful.
But it's not widescreen still. I mean, it's still 4:3.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I happen to prefer widescreen. I think, just speaking generally, that the choice you get on the PC side will be better. We'll have 7-inch versions and 11 and 12 and whatever, all these different tablet sizes. But, there is something to be said for the fact that the iPad form factor, which is essentially 4:3, is maybe more appropriate for other things other than just say watching a movie. That reading a book or magazine in that format is good. Reading the web or your email in that format is good. The Samsung tablet that I have running Windows 8 is like an iPad that's been stretched out, right? It's like it's like watching a letterbox movie. It's like which is neat, but then you turn it sideways and it's like a little too tall and thin in that form. I think it's fine, and I think that there are really great reading apps for this that will actually take advantage of that shape and all that. But I could see some people saying,
Yeah, what is it? 2048 by 1536 as the screen resolution. I mean, that's a high resolution screen.
That's higher resolution. From a percentage basis, the number of people in the Windows world who are running a resolution anywhere near that on a PC is less than 1%.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. And so for Apple to put that into a 10-inch tablet or whatever the screen is, 9.7-inch tablet, if that's true, is absolutely unbelievable, right? I mean, it's amazing. So you're going to get a clarity of text there that is going to be absolutely astonishing for ebook reading. You're going to have HD movies on this thing, I'm sure, because it will be a multi-core processor, and that will be one of the things I'm sure they push. You know, in other words, you can download an HD movie to the iPad 2 now, but what's the point? It's 1024 by 768, but at that resolution, now you're talking like Blu-ray quality. That's going to be unbelievable. I think that's exciting. It will have some kind of built-in cellular connection, right? Which they've done right. That's one of the things that Apple already does very right with the pay-as-you-go plans they have. But now maybe it will be 4G, which of course is fantastic.
Well, now I mean they're saying it's going to have a quad-core CPU. It's going to have this higher display and LTE. I mean the battery life. If they add LTE, I mean the rumors are that they might not add LTE in this version.
Right.
I can't see them not
if they
adding
don't,
LTE.
It will be
though.
a battery life issue, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, can you see them not releasing an LTE version of this device?
I couldn't see them not releasing an LTE version of the iPhone. So yeah, I can, because they're Apple, you know, and they do have kind of a screw you attitude that has worked out really well for them, where everyone else feels beholden to do what's expected, and Apple does what they feel is right. And you know, I have to say, you can sort of disagree with that. We talked about that with your phone and how it's nice to have the choice and everything. But the truth is, Apple has been phenomenally successful doing their own thing and going their own way. And I'm sure we're going to see some of that on the iPad 3 or HD or whatever they call it.
Do you think they're going to go thicker in the model? I don't think they're going to get it. They're going to go thicker in size.
That's not the way Apple does things.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that was one of the big rumors that they're going to go thicker. But the quad-core CPU, I doubt they're going to call it an iPad HD.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, they like sticking to the numbers.
Yeah, they do have a certain naming convention they use. I don't believe they've ever used HD for any device product, right? I'm trying to think back. No, I don't believe so. So, you know, they have, I don't know, they've had weird names for things. You know, they have things called Nano and Shuffle, and, you know, they use terms like 3G and 3GS, 4S. You know, it's kind of strange. I mean, obviously, they want to differentiate it from the iPad 2 in some way. And I do expect still, by the way, for them to keep the iPad 2 in the market.
Somebody's saying it's thicker in the leaked photos of the frame that we saw come out about last week. I think there was like a video.
Well, like thicker than what? Like thicker than a slice of paper? Because, you know, the current version is very thin as it is, right? I mean, there gets a point with the thinness on these things where I don't quite understand why you would even want it to be thinner, because it almost gets too fragile. It's ridiculous.
To me, I mean, I keep my iPad in like one of those silicone cases.
Yeah,
so it makes it a little thicker.
I'm actually really happy with the case I have for the iPad. It's one of the things I really like about it. And I use the Apple cover, but I bought a back that works with the Apple cover. And the interesting thing about that is, you know, one of the things I don't like about the Apple cover is that it's too easy for that thing to come off. And that back that I put on the back of it keeps it on. So they kind of work in concert. And, you know, it's nice. What can I say? I mean, it's nice. I wish I could put Windows 8 on it, but it's, you know,
Some of them,
it's good.
They're saying that they might add a 64 gigabyte model, the top end.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think it's necessary? I mean, they're pushing the iCloud. Do you think they would add a higher capacity
No, I
model?
don't. And this is one of those things. Again, like I said, I've been wrong about everything. I always felt with the iPad, like, they got to go up with the storage. They got to go up with the storage. They got to go up with the storage. And then you get to this point where, like you said, you have iCloud. And what they really need to do is add more stuff to iCloud.
Yeah.
So when I buy a TV show, a movie, whatever, it's always there. Actually, they do that with TV shows. They already do that with TV shows. Yeah, I think that combined with good connectivity kind of solves that problem. I mean, how much storage do you really need for just a when you're out and about, you know, or if you're going to be in an offline situation?
I'll be honest. I have the 16 gig model, and I'm nowhere near maxing out.
Yeah, I have a 32 gig, and I always, you know, I always want the most, the voluminous version, but they're so expensive. I can't. There's no way I could ever walk into an Apple store and spend $830 or whatever it is on like the really high end version. But you know, I put several movies on there, a couple TV shows. I have lots. I use the Kindle software, and do magazines through it on the iPad too. So I've got lots of magazine subscriptions in there and books. Couple of apps. I don't really do. I almost couldn't care less about apps, but very little in the way of apps and games, but a couple. But it, you know, when you add all that stuff up, it's kind of amazing how even in what sounds like a fairly constrained environment, right? 32 gig, A lot of stuff, and
Yeah.
certainly for a plane flight across country to Europe or whatever, plenty to do. And when you combine it with the battery life that these things get, which is also just a huge advantage for the iPad, it's kind of ideal for that kind of thing.
I'm just wondering how the higher resolution and the faster CPU, is that enough to entice people to go and buy it? I mean, yeah, we know that a lot of Apple people are going to go buy it because that's what a lot of people
it is,
do.
because
but
it's an Apple product and it's new. And the fact that it looks exactly like the other version,
but like if you go from,
not a detriment, it's a benefit.
But the iPad 2, I mean, there was a big difference between the first one and the second one. I mean, they added a camera, which nobody uses, of course, but the shape was a little different. It was faster. I could understand going from that to that, but if we're only getting the CPU,
it wasn't different enough that anyone should have upgraded. I mean, obviously there's a certain segment of the population that always has to buy the next one, but for most normal people, there are no additional capabilities that warrant this purchase unless you had to have that camera for some reason or whatever. I can't really imagine any reason.
One thing I don't see happening is a smaller iPad. I think they're just gonna, or a lower end iPad. I think they're just gonna keep the iPad 2 on the market and say, here's a lower end iPad.
I'll tell you this. So I fully expect that they will never release a smaller iPad, specifically because I could really use one. But if they ever did release that device, I would never look at Android ever again, ever. To me, that would be perfect as an ebook reader. Well, perfect in the sense that it can never be, well, I should say, perfect as an iPad for me is maybe the better way to put it. Because when I go away on a trip and I want something I can put in my bag that I can watch movies on, that I can read ebooks and magazines, do all those things, and I want it to be as small and as light as possible, but still be usable. I don't want it to be like a little teeny iPhone. Like it needs to be something in between.
Yeah.
And to me, that form factor, 7-8 inches, is perfect. The iPad, as it stands now, it's not like it's horrific, but I mean, it's another thing. And I think a smaller version is how I sort of see it as ideal. But I've seen those people, the arguments that people make about how this thing is a compromise. You may have seen that Dilbert strip, which I think was basically very appropriate. And I understand the arguments against it. And I don't expect them to do it because Apple is not about making compromised devices,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we saw it with the last phone, right? The speculations were that they're going to release two phones. They're going to release a lower end iPhone, and then they're going to release the iPhone 5. And they
in retrospect, right? That doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
I thought they were going to do that, but Apple goes all in on something. The way they'll do that is they will do that over time. 9 months later, 6 months from now, or whenever it is, they will release that iPhone 5. But then they'll just keep the iPhone 4S in the market, and those things will they'll continue selling.
Do people
millions of units every quarter?
Now, when they had the 3G, the 3GS still on the market with the 4, were people buying the 3GS?
Yeah. I actually,
why?
I
know
tried
it's
to
like.
find, by the way, I tried to find information on this. I'm reasonably sure that 50% of their iPhone sales are actually the older models, at least. I actually think if you added it up, all those older models together probably outsell the newest one. I'd like to see data on that. I do think that that's part of their very smart strategy of answering that need for a low-end device without having to make one. They just keep the older one in the market. It's genius.
Do you think we're going to see an Apple TV or an upgraded Apple TV?
You mean the device? Or
the device. Because that was also the rumor that's also going to be released, and that's why they're going to go with the HD theme, because they're going to have the iPad HD.
Oh, they'll have an HD version of it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't have any opinion about whether they will or won't. I could see that. I mean, I like the new version. That, too, is a little bit of one of those pills you got to swallow where it's not as capable as the thing it's replacing, right? Remember the original Apple TV had full HD, if I'm not mistaken. It didn't have 1080i HD output, if I'm not mistaken.
Paul, I'm going to be honest. I have a MacBook, and I buy Apple products. I have zero interest in the Apple TV.
So I actually don't use Apple products every day, except for one thing. I use the Apple TV all the time.
That's funny.
Yep. We use it for Netflix. Not that we couldn't get that elsewhere, but we do use it for Netflix.
I'm a big Google TV fan.
Yeah, well, who isn't?
Yeah.
I didn't mention Google TV because I thought that was assumed. I mean, obviously everyone uses it.
Everybody uses Google TV.
Loves it.
By the way, their update broke my my Roku. Not my Roku, my what do they call? What's the Logitech model?
Yeah.
The review.
Review. Yep.
It broke it. It does not function. Android keeps crashing over and over again, and it causes me to not be able to watch TV anymore.
I think you should just take the message and not worry.
Take a
about
sledgehammer to it live on the air.
I told you I have a TV sitting there if you want it.
I want nothing to do with it.
Okay, I'm throwing it out.
I mean, the rumor is that you're going to get a new Apple TV to coincide with the
like an HD
thing.
version of the So, assuming what everyone has said about this Apple TV is true, the existing one, you could imagine a multi-core version of this running some kind of iOS derivative that can now do 1080p, and will coincide with some sort of an HD push in the iTunes Store that will also be applicable to the iPad 3 or whatever.
Now, I highly doubt they're going to do that. And I'll tell you why. It would.
Okay.
The rumor is that you're going to get a dual-core A5 chipset. You're going to do 1080p, and yeah, you're going to have access to the store.
Yep.
If they have this crazy Apple TV that people are talking about and speculating how it's going to reinvent, what did he say? The reinventing the television or whatever it was. I don't think they're going to release something like what we think we're going to get with the Apple TV before they release the actual television. Because why would you, if you could get an iOS style interface with this Apple TV, why would anybody go and buy an actual TV? If they do, no, they gotta see. I think they should sell both. I think they should sell the device and the TVs. I think there's enough of a fan base for Apple that people would be very happy to buy the TVs. But then I think there's also just a normal selection of consumers that wants to get into that Apple world. And a $99 Apple TV is a beautiful and cheap way to do it. It's like the gateway drug. Or, Paul, what if the iPad became the Apple TV?
What if the iPad became the Apple TV?
Why not?
Like you could just blast it to the TV.
You just plug it right in. And then you take your iPod Touch and you control it with the iPod Touch. And if you don't have an iPod Touch, you could buy a MacBook Pro and control everything with a MacBook Pro.
We saw things like this at CS, but I can tell you this. If there is an iPad, an Apple TV 3, whatever they call it, it's going to look like this. It's going to be like the smallest little thing, that it's only big enough to handle a like an Ethernet cable or whatever.
Roku's doing that. And you know what? It's not selling well. People aren't buying it. And I read this study about those products, and they're saying, the Roku, there's a Roku thumb drive.
Oh, yeah.
And people were complaining they can't justify spending $100 or $200 on that tiny little thing.
That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
It can't possibly be worth that much money. Look how small
small it is because you're comparing it to one of these. You're comparing it to like a flash stick.
Well, even the current Apple TV, which is smaller than most external hard drives, it looks like a hockey puck.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like it could
how
possibly
much is it now?
be
How
a
much is the
powerful
Apple
little
TV?
computer, but it's it's pretty nice.
Yeah, but you're looking to spend about $100 for an Apple TV, right?
Yeah.
So if you're adding a dual core processor and you're adding all these features, I can't see them still charging you $100 and making something this little. I think they're going to stick to it because they want you to think you're getting, bang for your buck.
You know what I just realized 30 minutes into this call?
What?
I'm hearing
my feed
audio over the speakers.
Oh my God, what did you just do?
I just put it in my headphone.
Oh, it sounds a lot better.
Where it belongs.
Yeah, it sounds a lot better, actually.
So I've had these headphones in my head the whole time. As you can tell, I'm a discerning audiovisual genius.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope it's something good, but I currently, in its current state, I have zero interest in it. I think what people are thinking is that they're going to add Siri to it, and you're going to have Bluetooth remote control, and you're going to have a lot of that, but...
Well, there's something to be said for Siri on a TV, right?
Do people want to talk to the television, though? I mean, do you think
I talk to my television all the time,
Do you?
Usually it's harmful things or terrible things,
yeah.
but
it's most of the time it's a Boston game, but
I belittle it and try to ruin its sense of self-worth.
I talk to my TV all the time. It's when the Knicks are down by 45 and
yeah.
I had a bookie joke there, but I decided not to go there. My bookie's calling me, yelling at me. That's my cousin, actually. My cousin likes to bet on the games, and he'll curse constantly, and then his bookie calls him, and he starts cursing at the bookie. It's one of the greatest things ever. I I don't know. For 1080p, I don't know. I don't know about it. I think they should just go with one
is
launch.
that enough? I mean, 1080p.
They're saying 1080p.
Hardware.
Yeah, 1080p, Bluetooth, and Siri. They're not talking about a new interface. They're talking, just punching out 1080p. But I don't know. I mean, that
I could see the iPad thing's interesting. I mean, anyone who's used the AirPlay functionality where you play a movie or a TV show or something to the screen. You can play a game to the screen. It's pretty cool.
By the way, Paul, how much longer do you have? It's 5 o'clock.
Like 0 minutes.
Okay.
So anyone who's done that anyone who's experienced it will tell you it works really, really well.
Okay.
And so I could see that.
Okay. So this is a much shorter show. Like I said at the beginning, Paul needs to be out of here at 5, and I started the show about 10 minutes late today. So both of us are at fault. And
actually, I'll just give you the message I got from my wife.
What did you get?
I got an email from my wife. This is how we communicate. She sent me an email and said, "We've already left. I will meet you at the restaurant."
Is that what she said?
Yeah. And it says, "Your brother will pick you up at 5."
Okay. So now
they just abandoned me.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Just blame me, Paul. It's all right. To get more Paul information, and actually, by the way, you did your website was phenomenal on the last week during the Windows 8 stuff.
I promised people before this happened that I was going to pummel them with content.
Yeah, it was really good.
I did write something like 35 different articles.
Man, you must have been really busy because you wrote some long articles. I have no idea how that's humanly possible.
Yeah. Well, I guess the point is I'm not a serial exaggerator.
Yeah.
I knew I hoped anyway that I would have as much as I got done, and I did eventually get it all done. So.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff. If you go to winsupersite.com, you could get all the information there. Currently, it's installed Windows 8 on a Mac. Oh my God, and that comes in really handy for me because I'm going to do that.
It's a big tent. Everyone is welcome.
Yeah, look at that. I'm going to try that. Oh, that's really cool. I'm going to do that tonight, actually. I have nothing to do. You go to winsupersite.com. Also, if you miss any portion of this very short show, you could go to our website, guysfromqueens.com, and catch it in the archive section there. And until next week, Paul, I'll see you next time for What to Talk. Good night.